The sound of shattering glass echoed across our property like a symphony of destruction, each panel exploding against the concrete with a crystalline scream that made my heart stop. I dropped my coffee mug on the kitchen floor and ran outside, my bare feet slipping on the morning dew as I stumbled toward what had been my sanctuary just hours before. My greenhouse, my beautiful, carefully constructed greenhouse, lay in ruins. The aluminum frame stood like a skeleton against the dawn sky, twisted and bent at impossible angles. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Thousands of dollars worth of rare orchids, heirloom tomatoes, and exotic plants that I'd nurtured for years were scattered across the ground, their roots exposed to the harsh morning sun, already beginning to wither. The automated climate control system I'd saved for months to afford was crushed beneath a fallen beam, its digital display flickering weakly before dying completely. "What the hell happened?" I whispered, though I already suspected I knew. My brother Marcus stood at the edge of the destruction, still holding a sledgehammer, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. His face wore an expression I'd seen too many times before, self-righteous satisfaction mixed with just a hint of uncertainty, as if he was beginning to realize the magnitude of what he'd done. "Sarah," he said, his voice carrying that condescending tone that had grated on my nerves since childhood. "I know this looks bad, but you needed to learn. You destroyed it." The words came out flat, emotionless. I couldn't process what I was seeing. "You actually destroyed it." "You were becoming obsessed," Marcus continued, setting the sledgehammer down with deliberate care. "Mom and Dad are worried about you. You spend every waking moment out here instead of looking for a real job, instead of dating, instead of living your life." This was an intervention. An intervention. He called the destruction of my life's work an intervention. I walked through the wreckage, glass crunching under my feet, drawing blood that I didn't feel. My prized ghost orchid, the one that had taken me 3 years to convince to bloom, lay crushed beneath a sheet of polycarbonate. The heritage tomato seedlings I'd been nurturing from seeds my grandmother had saved were scattered like confetti across the concrete. The hydroponic system that had cost me 6 months of overtime shifts was twisted beyond repair. $22,000. That's what I'd invested in this greenhouse over the past 2 years. Every penny of my savings from my job at the garden center, every birthday gift, every Christmas bonus. I'd foregone vacations, new clothes, nights out with friends. I'd eaten ramen for months to afford the automated irrigation system. I'd worked double shifts to pay for the rare plant specimens that were now dying in the morning sun. "Sarah, say something," Marcus pressed. "You know I'm right. You know this was necessary." I turned to face him, and something in my expression made him take a step back. "Necessary? You're 28 years old and you live in Mom and Dad's basement. You have a college degree, but you work part-time at a plant nursery. You haven't been on a date in 2 years. All you care about are these stupid plants." "These stupid plants were my business," I said quietly. "I was selling seedlings online. I was building something." Marcus scoffed. "Making $50 a month selling tomato plants to hippies isn't a business, Sarah. It's a hobby that got out of control. Mom and Dad asked me to help you see reason." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. "Mom and Dad asked you to do this?" "They're worried about you." "We all are." This was supposed to be a wake-up call. I looked back at the ruins of my greenhouse, at the years of careful cultivation reduced to debris in a single morning. Marcus had always been the golden child, the successful lawyer, the one with the perfect house in the suburbs, the one our parents called when they needed advice. I was the disappointing daughter who never lived up to expectations, who chose plants over people, who was still finding her way at an age when Marcus had already achieved everything our parents thought constituted success. But this greenhouse had been mine. It was the one thing I'd built without their input, without their judgment, without their constant comparisons to Marcus and his achievements. It was the place where I'd found peace, purpose, and yes, profit. My online plant business had been growing steadily, and I'd been planning to expand, to turn it into something substantial. I'd had dreams. "I need you to leave," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, don't be dramatic. Get off this property before I call the police." Marcus straightened his shoulders, falling back into his familiar role as the reasonable older brother. "I know you're upset, but once you calm down, you'll see that I did this because I love you. If you ever cared about me, you would have talked to me. You would have asked what I was planning, what I was building. You wouldn't have destroyed 2 years of my life in a single morning." "It's just plants, Sarah. Just plants." That's when something inside me crystallized into pure, cold fury. Not the hot anger that flares and burns out, but the kind of rage that settles in your bones and changes you from the inside out. I walked to the house without another word, leaving Marcus standing in the wreckage. My parents were in the kitchen, sitting at the table with matching guilty expressions that told me everything I needed to know. "Sweetheart," Mom began, "we can explain. You planned this?" Dad cleared his throat. "We're worried about you, honey. You're isolating yourself. You gave Marcus permission to destroy my property." "Technically, it's our property," Mom said softly. "The greenhouse was built on our land." The legal technicality felt like salt in an open wound. I'd asked permission. Before building the greenhouse, had even paid them rent for the land it occupied. But they were right. I had no legal recourse, no way to demand compensation or justice through official channels. "We thought if you didn't have the distraction of the greenhouse, you'd focus on building a real life," Dad added. "Marcus has offered to help you update your resume, to network with people in his firm." "Get out." They exchanged glances. "Sarah, both of you, get out of my sight before I do something we'll all regret." They left, and I stood alone in the kitchen, looking out at the ruins of my dreams. The silence was broken only by the sound of my phone buzzing. Text messages from Marcus. "I know you're angry, but give it time. You'll thank me for this someday. Call me when you're ready to be an adult about this." I blocked his number and began to plan. The first phase was research. I spent the following week in my room, emerging only for food and bathroom breaks, diving deep into the internet's collective knowledge of revenge. I read stories of sibling betrayal, studied legal loopholes, researched everything from credit reports to professional licensing boards. Marcus was proud of his reputation as a successful attorney, proud of his perfect life, proud of his status as the family golden child. Pride, I realized, was his weakness. The second phase was documentation. I created a detailed inventory of everything Marcus had destroyed, complete with photographs I'd taken of my plants over the years, receipts for every purchase, and a comprehensive business plan I'd been developing for expansion. The total value of the destruction was even higher than I'd initially calculated, closer to $30,000 when I included the plants, the specialized equipment, and the projected lost income from my growing business. The third phase was investigation. I started with Marcus's social media profiles, his law firm's website, his professional associations. I discovered that he'd been inflating his success for years. The partner track position he bragged about was actually a junior associate role at a mid-tier firm, struggling with several ethical violations from other attorneys. His perfect suburban house was mortgaged to the hilt, and his expensive car was leased. The golden child was living paycheck to paycheck, maintaining an image he couldn't afford. But the real discovery came when I started looking into his professional conduct. Marcus had always been careless with details, too confident in his own intelligence to double-check his work. A thorough search of public court records revealed a pattern of minor but significant errors in his case filings: missed deadlines, incomplete documents, procedural violations that his firm had been quietly covering for him. The fourth phase was execution. I started small. Anonymous tips to his firm's managing partners about his pattern of errors, backed up with meticulously documented evidence. A carefully worded complaint to the State Bar Association about his conduct in a case where his negligence had cost a client thousands in damages. Nothing false, nothing vindictive, just the truth, presented in a way that couldn't be ignored. Then I expanded the scope. Marcus had always been condescending about my failure to launch, but he'd built his entire identity on comparison. So I began to build something better. Using the insurance payout from the greenhouse destruction, a small victory, our parents' homeowners policy did cover some of the damage. I rented a small commercial space across town. I hired a lawyer of my own, one of Marcus's former colleagues who had left his firm after witnessing the ethical violations I'd uncovered. Together, we established a legitimate plant business, complete with proper licensing, professional insurance, and a detailed business plan. The botanical specialty company I created was everything Marcus had dismissed as impossible. I partnered with local restaurants to provide fresh herbs and microgreens, contracted with florists to supply rare and exotic plants, and developed an online presence that reached customers across the state. Within 6 months, I was earning more than my former garden center salary. Within a year, I was earning more than Marcus. But financial success wasn't enough. I wanted him to understand what he'd taken from me, not just the money or the plants, but the sense of sanctuary, the feeling of building something with my own hands, the peace I'd found in nurturing living things. So I bought the house next to his. The property had been on the market for months, priced just high enough to deter most buyers. I made a cash offer and closed within 3 weeks. Then I began construction on the most spectacular greenhouse complex anyone in the neighborhood had ever seen. It was excessive, I'll admit. 3 interconnected greenhouse structures with automated climate control, a sprinkler system visible from space, and enough grow lights to illuminate a small city. I specialized in the most aromatic plants I could find: jasmine, gardenia, night-blooming cereus. The fragrance drifted across the property line on summer evenings, a constant reminder of what he'd destroyed. I hired a landscaping crew to work during the day while Marcus was at the office, but I made sure the most impressive installations happened on weekends when he was home. The koi pond went in on a Saturday, complete with a fountain that provided just enough white noise to mask conversations, but not enough to violate noise ordinances. The greenhouse extension that blocked his kitchen window view went up on a Sunday, all permits properly filed and approved. The coup de grace was the business expansion. I hired Marcus's ex-girlfriend, the one who dumped him when she discovered his financial problems, as my business manager. She was brilliant with marketing and had connections throughout the city's restaurant scene. Together, we built my plant business into something that couldn't be dismissed or ignored. The local newspaper ran a feature story about my success, complete with photos of my greenhouse complex and an interview where I mentioned how I'd started the business after a family crisis taught me the importance of resilience and independence. I never mentioned Marcus by name, but everyone who knew our family understood the reference. Marcus's response was predictably explosive. He called me dozens of times, leaving increasingly angry voicemails that I saved, but never returned. He showed up at my commercial property twice, demanding to speak with me, until my lawyer sent him a cease and desist letter. He complained to our parents, who were caught between pride in my success and discomfort with the obvious tension between their children. The final blow came when his law firm let him go. The state bar investigation I'd initiated had uncovered more serious issues than I'd expected. Not just carelessness, but actual misconduct that his firm couldn't cover up anymore. He wasn't disbarred, but his reputation was ruined. The golden child had tarnished his own crown. He came to my house on a rainy Tuesday evening, 6 months after I'd moved in next door. I watched him through my security camera as he stood on my doorstep, rain soaking through his cheap suit. He'd had to downgrade his wardrobe along with everything else. I let him wait for 5 minutes before answering the door. "Sarah," he said, and his voice was different, smaller. "I need to talk to you." "About what?" "You know what. This has to stop." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen in my older brother's face before: genuine fear. "What has to stop, Marcus?" "The complaints to my firm. The bar association thing. Whatever you did to sabotage my career." His voice cracked slightly. "I know it was you. I didn't do anything to sabotage your career. I simply documented your existing pattern of professional negligence and reported it to the appropriate authorities." "Sarah, please." "I lost my job. Melissa won't return my calls. I might lose the house." "Melissa was never really your girlfriend, Marcus. She was my business manager who occasionally went to dinner with you because you kept asking and she felt sorry for you." The look on his face might have been comical if I hadn't been so tired of the whole situation. "You hired her just to hurt me." "I hired her because she's excellent at her job and deserved better than the way you treated her. The fact that it also bothered you was just a bonus." We stood in the doorway for a long moment, the rain falling steadily behind him. Finally, he spoke again, quieter this time. "I'm sorry about the greenhouse." "Are you?" "Yes, I am. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." I studied his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the condescending tone that had colored every interaction we'd had since childhood. But for once, Marcus looked genuinely remorseful. "Do you understand what you destroyed? Your plants, your hobby. Try again." He was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Your business? Keep going. Your sanctuary? Your safe space? What else?" "I don't know, Sarah." "Tell me." "My trust in my family. My belief that the people who claim to love me wouldn't conspire to destroy something I'd built with my own hands. My faith that my own brother wouldn't betray me to prove a point." Marcus's shoulders sagged. "I thought I was helping. You thought you knew better than I did about my own life. You thought my dreams were worth less than your opinions. You thought destroying something I loved would somehow make me love myself less. I was wrong. Yes, you were." We stood in silence again, and I realized something surprising. I was tired of being angry. The rage that had sustained me through months of planning and execution had burned itself out, leaving only exhaustion and a strange sort of clarity. "What do you want from me, Marcus?" "I want my life back." "I can't give you that. You destroyed your own life through years of carelessness and arrogance. I just made sure the consequences finally caught up with you." "So what now? Do we hate each other forever?" I considered the question seriously. "I don't hate you, Marcus. I don't trust you, and I don't particularly like you, but I don't hate you. Can we try to fix this? There's nothing to fix between us. You made your choice when you picked up that sledgehammer. I made mine when I decided to build something better. Mom and Dad want us to reconcile. Mom and Dad wanted you to destroy my greenhouse. I'm not particularly interested in their opinions on family relationships right now." Marcus nodded slowly, water dripping from his hair. "I deserve that." "Yes, you do." "Sarah, I know I can't undo what I did, but is there anything I can do to make this right?" I thought about it. "You could start by telling Mom and Dad the truth about why you're really here. Stop pretending this is about family harmony and admit that you're afraid of what else I might discover if I keep digging into your professional conduct. His face went pale. There's nothing else to discover. Isn't there? We looked at each other for a long moment, and I saw him realize that I knew about the client funds, the missed court dates, the case files he'd falsified to cover his mistakes. He'd always underestimated me, and that had been his downfall. Sarah, go home, Marcus. Take care of your own problems and leave me alone. I closed the door and watched through the security monitor as he walked slowly back to his car, his shoulders hunched against the rain. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for him. But mostly, I felt free. The next morning, I found my parents on my doorstep. They'd clearly been talking to Marcus, and they looked older somehow, worn down by the reality of what their family had become. "We need to talk," Mom said. "About what?" "About forgiveness," Dad added. "About family. About how you asked Marcus to destroy my greenhouse without talking to me first?" They exchanged glances. "We were worried," Mom began. "You were embarrassed," I corrected. "You were embarrassed that your daughter wasn't living up to your expectations, so you decided to force me to change rather than accept who I am." "That's not—" "It's exactly true, and you know it. You wanted me to be more like Marcus, so you asked Marcus to eliminate the thing that made me different." Dad cleared his throat. "We made a mistake." "Yes, you did. We want to make it right." I looked at them. These people who had raised me, who had loved me in their imperfect way, who had nevertheless betrayed me when it mattered most, and felt a complex mix of emotions that I couldn't quite untangle. "How?" "We could help you rebuild." "I don't need your help. I built something better on my own." "Then what do you want from us?" It was a fair question. What did I want from them? An apology wouldn't change what had happened. Money wouldn't restore what I'd lost. Time wouldn't heal the betrayal. "I want you to understand," I said finally. "I want you to understand that I'm not broken just because I'm different from Marcus. I want you to understand that my dreams have value, even if they don't match yours. I want you to understand that destroying something I loved didn't make me love you more. It made me trust you less." Mom started crying quietly. "We never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. And when Marcus destroyed my greenhouse, you told me to forgive him instead of holding him accountable. You prioritized his feelings over mine, just like you always have." "We love you both equally," Dad protested. "No, you don't. You love Marcus for who he is, and me for who you think I could become. There's a difference." We stood in silence for a moment. Finally, Mom spoke again. "What can we do to earn your forgiveness?" "Stop asking for it. Start showing me that you respect who I am, not who you want me to be. And stop protecting Marcus from the consequences of his choices." They left without another word, and I went back to my greenhouse, back to the work I loved, back to the life I'd built from the ruins of the old one. 6 months later, Marcus moved across the country, taking a job with a small firm that didn't know his history. He sent me a letter before he left. A real apology this time, acknowledging what he'd destroyed and taking responsibility for his choices. I kept the letter but didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. My parents and I developed a cautious, careful relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. They visited my greenhouse complex once, and I saw my mother's face when she realized the scope and sophistication of what I'd built. She didn't apologize again. She didn't need to. Her expression said, "Everything." My business continued to grow. I hired employees, expanded to a second location, developed partnerships with botanical gardens and universities. I became the kind of success that Marcus had always claimed to be, but I did it on my own terms, in my own way. The greenhouse that Marcus destroyed had been beautiful, but it had also been small, hidden, almost apologetic in its existence. The empire I built to replace it was bold, visible, undeniable. It was my declaration that I would not be diminished, that I would not hide who I was to make others comfortable. Sometimes, late at night when I'm walking through my greenhouses, surrounded by the soft glow of grow lights and the gentle whisper of automated irrigation systems, I think about forgiveness. Not the cheap forgiveness my parents demanded, the kind that asks victims to pretend they weren't hurt to make everyone else feel better, but the real kind. The kind that acknowledges harm and chooses to move forward anyway. I forgave Marcus. Eventually. Not because he deserved it, but because carrying anger was heavier than carrying hope. I forgave my parents because love is complicated and family is imperfect, and some relationships are worth saving even when they're damaged. But forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean pretending the betrayal never happened or that the relationships hadn't fundamentally changed. It just meant that I chose to define myself by what I built rather than by what was destroyed. The sound that woke me on that terrible morning was the sound of shattering glass, my dreams breaking apart in the dawn light. But glass, when it breaks, doesn't disappear. It transforms into something else, something sharp enough to cut through pretense and strong enough to build something new. In the end, Marcus did teach me a lesson, though not the one he intended. He taught me that I was stronger than I knew, more resilient than anyone had given me credit for, and capable of building something beautiful from the fragments of something broken. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be destroyed.